aloha kala, mahalo for spending your evening over here with the Cool Project podcast. And, I just really want to say I appreciate your time and energy, because I know there's a lot going on, especially with families and stuff. I have 3 young ones and 3 little ones who are running around right now, who knows where, but it's one of those things where I want to be respectful of your time too. So mahalo for doing that for me. But before we begin, can you just introduce yourself and share a little bit of who you are, where you come from?
Ai, aloha mai, o wau o paana Kalā Baybayan Tanaka, no lahaina mai au, no ho'au I wailuku I ke'ia manawa. I have 3 little ones as well. And so I was born in Lahaina, raised there in the summer times. My family moved to Kona, that's where I graduated, but then came back to Maui. I do different things, I think, as people or Kanaka who love our aina and love our community. We do what needs to be done. Yeah. So I'm the education director for the Hui O Waʻa Kaulua, which is also based in Lahaina. We have Mo'okihau Pi'ilani. Mo'olele was the first. She was the first. She was born way before me, but she passed away in the fire. I'm also a kumu at the Kaiapuni o Lahaina. So again, another Lahaina connection there. And then also here as well too, the Four Seasons do the Hawaiian Star Stories. Yeah.
One of the things that drew me to you, especially when I was given the opportunity to speak with you, was your experience in wayfinding and voyaging and so forth. And in the Hawaiian community, that is a big symbol for us. It's like that North Star that we always follow and gives us life and gives us inspiration, So this, again, being here, sitting with you, knowing hearing what you're experiencing and learning about that, it's very humbling to be in your presence because it is something in the Hawaiian community that we all look up to, we look towards for guidance. So, what inspired you to even start sailing and voyaging? What was like that inspiration? Where did that come from?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, it probably started way before me, at the very beginning, with that first crazy ancestor who got on the wa'a and came over here. And then it was just, for many generations kind of under the, but actually my father definitely, I grew up around the canoe. Chad Kalā Baybayan, he's a master navigator, and growing up I would see him go out on these voyages. But he was the kind of person that he never wanted to force his children to do what he loved. And, he wanted us to find the things that we loved on our own and pursue them. And so actually it wasn't until I was in college and actually here on Maui at Maui Community College, I was taking Olelo Hawaii as well as Hawaiian Studies. And for me, that was I feel like the first time in my life that I was really going deep and trying to really understand and reconnect with a part of my identity whom I know, this is how your ancestors came here, and I don't know, I feel kind of shame saying it, but I feel like I didn't know that much. I didn't learn that much while I was in high school. They didn't really teach me much in school. And so when I was in college, it was wow, so much I was learning. And so while I was there, I became curious as to what it would be like. What is it like, to be on a voyaging canoe or to experience the things that our kupuna had experienced? I don't know, because I had never done that except for the fact that my father did those kinds of things. And so that was definitely the beginning. My father is a very, as a leader, he's the strong, silent kind of a man of few words. And when he says something, it's he means it. And it's okay, we act on it. And so I was a little bit intimidated to ask him if I could go and voyage with him and sail with him. I felt this is so not okay for me to ask him. So then I asked my grandma because, no one can say no to grandma.
Yeah.
So
that's smart.
Yeah, I asked her and I was I'm really interested. I want to know what it's like to sail on the canoe. I want to go sailing with Dad. And she got on the phone with him, and then she got off the phone and she said, okay, you're gonna go. At that time, he had finished building a canoe. Her name was Hokualaka'i, born there in Hilo, Hawaii. It was the Punana Leo, that Aha Punana Leo that had built that canoe. My dad he was in charge of the building of it, and he was the captain and the navigator. And so it was around the time that this canoe was kind of making her maiden sail throughout the islands. And so that's what I was gonna go do. I was gonna go on one of these awesome legs. Oh, wow. And the canoe was there in Oahu, and at the Marine Education Training Center there at Sand Island, and the canoe was getting ready to come back to Lahaina. And so that's what I was gonna sail. And it was very, again, I'm intimidated by my dad, but then, you know, one of the most beautiful things about this canoe is everything Maka'olelo Hawaii. And I was just beginning to learn it. And so it was, intimidating, scary. Like I'm like at this preschool kind of level of learning it, and I'm gonna be around all of these people, and they're so proficient and they know so much more, and how am I gonna communicate? And then he told me, I found out like the whole crew, they were all guys, and so there's even like a wondering if I even belonged on the canoe, because, you know, how is this wahine gonna go sail with all these kane? But the one thing that made me feel like I could do it, that I wasn't gonna like chicken out or whatever, was that my father was there. You know, he's a rock, and I feel like, to me too, when I look back at that, it makes me realize the importance that makua have in the lives of their children. If it's your child, or maybe you're teaching that child, so in that way or form, you are that makua. And so just realizing the importance that we as makua have in like creating safe places, and places for our kids to feel comfortable to try new things. So anyways, I went, and of course everybody, like, I think this is one thing that people always think about, like, are you gonna get sick on the canoe, or where do you use the bathroom on the canoe? And on that canoe there's no real like a head or toilet. The bathroom is, you put a harness on, you go outside of the canoe, there's like a catwalk that goes along the gunnel or the hull of the canoe, and you basically put your harness on and you squat and you use the bathroom. That's how you do it. And then of course I was worried about getting seasick, but when we left there, Oahu, in the late afternoon, and we throw the lines were sailing out, I'm realizing like, oh my gosh, I'm not getting sick, I can do this. So we had dinner, I felt fine, and then use the bathroom, everything's all good. And then one thing that I didn't think about, and I look back now and just reflecting on how special that was that actually all of the crew there, we were all learning together. It wasn't like one person was better than the other. Of course you have your captain and the navigator, he's also the kumu as well, to your teacher. But basically all of these other ho'ova'a, all of these other crew were learning alongside me. And so all of those worries just began to melt away. I also realized just what an amazing teacher my father is. As we were going into the sail, he's talking about looking at the ocean, and we're looking at the swells, so we're looking at the ale, and he's talking about like where they're coming from and how you can use these ale to like hold our course. And you know, like I feel like I kind of learned a little bit surfing, but this was different. This was totally different. You know, surfing, you catching a wave. Here, we're using this to sail to another island. This is, you know, something that's far, far away. We can't necessarily see the island yet. But anyways, we're using these ale to hold our course. And then at night, you know, when the whole crew came out, and he's just talking to us about them. Every hoku has a name, every hoku has a purpose, and all of them are basically helping to orient ourselves, know where we are in our space. And I think the last one that really just was like, that's it, I'm all in, was at like 2:00 in the morning when I was steering the canoe. And he was like telling me, he's like, oh, do you hear that? And I'm like, I hear the wind. He's like, no, that's not it. So he took me to the manu of the canoe, the very like front manu. And so we kind of kneeled down there by the bow, and what he could hear was the dolphins. So these naia were just swimming with us, but he could hear them breathing. And I was just like, that was it after that. Because like I said, I never learned this in school. They didn't teach me this in school, but these are the things that I feel like I really like gravitated to. Like they just seem so natural for me. And it's like, you could have taught me astronomy in school and I wouldn't have got it. But you teach me astronomy out there and I'm using this to steer and hold a course using these stars. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing ever.
You mentioned that the whole education part. I think growing up, I had the hardest time in academics.
Yeah.
You know, like being in a school system, I was very much more of a hands-on person. Like I had to learn by doing. So a lot of my education came from like my father in like the yard or my grandfather building things and putting things together and, you know, working on nets and so forth. So that was kind of like part of my, because you put me in the classroom, I had a hard time just even understanding why I was even there in the first place. So I totally can relate to that whole thing of, you know, put me out into nature, put me out and doing things and active. Then I can truly understand exactly what you want me to learn. You know, like how can I apply this to where I'm in right now? You know, you know, being out on the voyaging and wayfinding, like what are some of the values that it taught you that you bring into your daily life?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's hard to choose a few because there are so many. I think the first thing was like trust. You know, you trust your captain, you trust your navigator, you trust your canoe, you trust each other, you trust your environment that's around you, that all of these things that it's telling you they're correct. So I think trust is an important one. Aloha, definitely, absolutely aloha. I forget who it was, but somebody said to me, like, your voyage could be the best voyage ever, or it could be the worst voyage. And it really comes down to how you treat one another. Yeah. And so, like, I remember, like, on one of my voyages, somebody got hurt, and we work in these different rotations. Yeah. And so that person had to sit on the side. And I could just, like, see in their face that was, like, the hardest thing for them to do because they really wanted to help. And I get it. Like we're all like that. We all like really just want to help, and we want to make sure that, you know, we help pull the weight so that it doesn't rest on one person's shoulders. But really just having, I could see that in her face, and that she just had so much love and wanting to take care of us. But it was like, no, we got it. And you know, sure enough, in like a couple days, she's feeling better, and so she can. So that aloha. Values, gosh, you know, and even like the kuleana that we have, that we take that which is our kuleana seriously. And you know, like it's not like we choose it to, like, through what we've done and what we're actively doing, we get those kuleana. And so we have to really malama that, and that begins before you even get on a voyage, all in the preparation part. Oh gosh, there are so many. I'm like thinking some more. I mean, even just like I think about the intergenerational learning. I mean, I consider that a value of taking care of our kupuna and spending time with them to learn from them, because they were certainly the ones that taught me. Consider all the uncles and the aunties. You know, they tell me their stories and, you know, little secrets to make the steering a little bit easier or whatnot. And I see them on the canoe, like they like are like 20 years younger. It's insane what the canoe does to that. You know. But also the kupuna that we can't see. I think that's really an important value to honor. And malama and acknowledge them as well too, because it's like, you know, I voyaging in this generation that's different than when my father voyaged. You know, I feel like them and the kupuna before them, they're all the pioneers, and I'm so lucky that when I grew up, Hokulea was already born. All of the different voyaging canoes, they were already born. So I was lucky to have that. I never had to fight for that. Into existence. I'm sure. I know there are more.
I mean, there's so much because, you know, you mentioned like the kupuna is something that really guides me, you know. I was lucky enough to be part of Lua, you know, learning and it was one of those things where I was going through a moment of identity, you know, trying to figure out who I am as a Native Hawaiian. And I was invited to go to Lua and learn this workshop and learn the Native Hawaiian art of warfare. But then going there, I learned that it was actually more about healing than hurting, you know, like, and our first rule was before you learn how to hurt, you learn how to heal, you know. So that was the biggest thing. But it was that whole kupuna, passing it down and everything. But I remember there was one point where we're learning a chant, and it was called a mahau, where we basically work on transforming ourselves into kamapua'a, you know. And we're out in the open and we're doing this chant over and over because we're trying to show our alohe, our teacher, that we know it. But he kept making us do it over and over again. He said, that's not right, that's not right. But finally he mentioned, like, just imagine you see your kupuna in front of you, behind you, all around you, you know. Because at that point we're going more from an ego part. We're trying to be like loud, a big body and everything. But he says there's a balance between those two areas. And so then he says, just imagine that all your kupuna around you watching. Now do it. And when we did it, it was like a totally different essence there. And the mana was different. That, like, we even felt it was different. Because then now we're remembering who we were, why we're there, and who allowed us to be there, you know. And so that was, that made a huge difference. And that's been like kind of a guiding thing for myself as well. Just kupuna, like, and one of the things that I love to do is go out into the ocean or to the beach and just stare off into the horizon. You know, my grandfather always said, like, horizon for us means possibilities. You know, it means what is out there, you never know. The possibilities that are endless for you to learn. Another question I have for you, you know, given all your voyages and your wayfinding experiences, is there a story that sticks out to you where you were out on the ocean and you felt more at home out there?
The long ones.
The long ones?
Always the long ones.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, because I enjoy, like, to be alone.
Yeah.
They call that introvert.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
But always the long one. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's near or far, but I just feel like when we're on the longer voyages, you're in the state of you know, not too much from like what we're experiencing now, I guess you could say, or normal daily life. Yeah. It doesn't matter to check your emails because there's just no point in doing that. Yeah. You can't even if you wanted to. Yeah. Or you got to go pay your credit card bill or whatever. It's like all of that other stuff just kind of melts away and you're just so, like, in the zone, I guess, of being very connected to, I feel like, what really matters, like our environment. And yeah, it's like a meditative state, definitely. And I remember too, like, stories about Papa Mau. Yeah, you know, like I learned from my dad. My dad learned from Nainoa Thompson. Nainoa Thompson learned from Papa Mau. He's really the one that, the reason why I can say that I wayfind, because I learned through that genealogy. But I remember one of my uncles telling this story of how Papa Mau gives directions going back home, and he talked about seeing certain animals along the way. And that was like before I did a long voyage, and so it was hard for me to understand that. Yeah. And then I did 3 transoceanic voyages between Hawaii and Tahiti. And every time we would get around this certain area, we would see these dolphins. The first time I thought it was neat, and the second time I thought, wow, what a coincidence. And the third time I was like, oh my gosh, this is where they live. I'm like, I understand now. Wow. But it's like seeing that too, like, oh, you know, like, hey, we're on this familiar road that we've been traversing for thousands of years, and like how cool it is that we're on this same road again, and these are probably the descendants of those yeah. And so it feels like being at home, definitely.
You know, you mentioned you have 3, right? So do you hope that they can follow and go voyaging, or are you taking your dad's route and letting them figure it out?
I'm a little bit different. I say the both. I want them to love the ocean, you know, because that's the thing too. We're out there. We love the sea. The sea is not something that we're scared of, right? It's something that feeds us. It's something that connects us to other places in the world. And it's something that's part of who we are in our genealogy since the very beginning. And so I just want them to have a love for the ocean, and I want to teach them how to sail. And if one day they decide, oh yeah, I want to do the long ones or whatever, continue, that's awesome. But at least teaching them a love for the sea, and at least like how to, I feel like every child should know this kind of, you know, should know this.
No, that, you know, and, you know, we're, like, as you mentioned in the beginning, we're here at the Four Seasons. You know, what brought you here to the Four Seasons, and what exactly is a row here?
Oh, yes.
How did that work out?
You know, actually one of the people that work here, and his daughter was one of my students in my voyaging class. And so that was kind of like certainly a connection there. And then I think meeting the team, us getting to know each other. So pilina is absolutely important. I know, like in my family too, my parents have worked in the hotel industry. So it wasn't like something new, I guess, but only new in that I'd never really like done this before. And just being in my whole realm of education is so important. My priority, of course, are my haumana that live here, our kaiaulu, and their needs. But I think I also think that this is important for just humans to know, to have this, you know, acknowledgement and respect for all of the beautiful, you know, cultures and the knowledge that we have, so that when we come to a place, we really just like realize how special it is. Is it a wayfinding experience that you do over here? So it's like a blend, I guess you could say. We call it Star Stories. And so I do talk about absolutely the history of voyaging, kind of like some of the stories of the past, or one of the last voyagers that left Maui and went back to their home. But also just like the renaissance of voyaging, and how this island connects to that story. And then, I do talk a little bit about the navigation, and how we navigate on the canoe, type of navigation that we use. But like coming up, right, we have a lot of families that come. I share a lot about the star stories, so the stories that are out there. A little bit about how we use those stars to navigate, absolutely, but also the stories that are connected to them. Because, you know, for example, like the story of Manaya Kalani and Maui, that story comes out of a Hawaiian newspaper. And so to be able to continue to tell those stories of our kupuna, and although I've never met the person, you know, or don't know that person, hey, maybe we might be related or something. But it makes me feel good to continue to tell their stories.
You know, when visitors do go on the star storytelling and everything, what is something that you hope that they take away from that experience? Appreciation,
and just love for the culture, for this place, for just all of these crazy voyagers that came here. But you know, for the culture, and appreciation and respect for that, and knowing that, you know, not all knowledge comes from just that Western side. And so to have that, to help to broaden and grow their knowledge banks.
And I think that's a powerful thing, because you're actually out on the boats too, right? I mean, you're in nature. You're on the boat. You're looking at the stars. And, you know, for me, I mean, I've always had a fascination with stars myself. Like, I remember my father and I would just like lie on our yard and just look up in the stars, you know, and just get lost and just talk. And those are the moments that stick out to me the most of my feeling with my father. We mentioned aloha spirit, right, with and living and having aloha. What does that mean to you?
Aloha? My grandma, you know, when my grandma told me about aloha, she said, and she was like kind of recalling a story between her and her auntie. And she said, when somebody tells you aloha, you can feel it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so think about that. Think about that when you're saying it, you're not just saying it, but you're giving it like your energy, and you're really putting it out there. And so I guess for me too, like I do think of it like, you know, I guess the Western word is love, but not necessarily just in the word, but kind of extended out in the way that you act and you put that energy out. I could say that and not mean it, right? So it's more than just the word, but it's that energy and the actions that we put out. Yeah,
it goes back to that whole concept of the power behind words, right? That you can feel the words when it's spoken to you, or even when someone says, "How are you doing?" Yeah, you can actually feel it if they actually mean it. Yes, you know. Yes. So that seems to be even Auntie Wendy said the same exact thing. Oh, you know, it's very similar like that. But I think that's the very Native Hawaiian part of us, right? It's about that exchange of energy and understanding, and we feel a lot. I think for us, we feel a lot of emotions, and we can sense certain energy if we're open, allow ourselves to be open to it, you know.
And being very present in that moment, And I feel like nowadays there's so much to distract us that being present is absolutely a gift.
Yeah, it is. I was talking stories not too long ago. When I was growing up, my grandfather used to sit on his chair and just like stare off into his yard. And I remember going up to him and asking him, like, what are you looking at? Like, what are you doing? He's just like, I'm just enjoying life in the tropics. And so I just sit there with him, just in silence. And then not too long ago, I was outside sitting down on my chair, looking out to the yard. And my son comes up and he asked me the same question. Dad, what you looking at? And I kind of just like had that moment. I was like doing what he was doing, you know. But it's being present and taking a moment to just kind of like be and just be. And I think that's what, when you are wayfinding, when you're voyaging, you just have to be in a present moment, right? Yeah. And so that is something so important for all of us to be reminded of. To be, hey, there's so much that we get lost in, the distractions and work and family stuff and relationship stuff and trying to figure out where our place is in society and everything. Sometimes you just need to stop and take a breath and look at the ocean, you know, and stare up into the horizon. Yes. Or into the stars. Yep. Is there a star that is kind of that you are drawn to, that you like the story of the most, or do you feel relate to?
Yeah. Humu is definitely one, and Humu Ma. Humu, I guess some people refer to it as Altair. But Humu is the navigator, and the two little stars on the side, we call them Humu Ma, but they are his sons. They're definitely the ones, like when I voyaged to Tahiti, I would always see them. But even before that, it was like the story that really drew me to it. Just having two boys and a daughter as well. And just in a past like voyage, those were the ones that I used to help me hold my line. Nice. And so, I mean, like, oh, wow. So on different, different levels that it's important to me. And then just the relationship of that, and like, as it relates to like our voyaging season between Hawaii and Tahiti.
No, I have two boys and a girl too. Oh, awesome. And so the dynamics are very good, you know. It's always fun to see the dynamic with the three of them like that. Given with wayfinding and voyaging, what is something that you hope for the future of wayfinding to have an impact on the world? Because like, as I mentioned, like as a Native Hawaiian myself and in the community, we look at wayfinding and the voyaging as hope, you know. So what is your hope for like the future of wayfinding?
I think, well, for me, the future of wayfinding and this, just to see it grow and to, the relationship with our environment is so important, and it's vital to just the success of any voyage, and utilizing all of these things around us. So being more just listening, I guess, to the environment of what the world is or what our environment is trying to tell us, and like not just this voyage from Hawaii to Tahiti, but kind of on the long term, more than that, about where as humankind we're going, and understanding all aspects of it, that the voyage starts before you even leave land, and the canoe started up there as a tree. And so really, understanding that relationship too, that we have this responsibility to take care of these resources, and we really are in a little canoe, and so what we do will cause less for somebody else or whatnot. And so finding what that balance is, and make sure that we're very conscious about how we're stewarding and ensuring that we do have water in the stream for our native life, that we still have vibrant reefs, that we can still fish 7 generations beyond.
I asked all my a lot of the listeners for the Kupatu podcast, they're in Hawaii, or they're people who are living in diaspora, or who are looking for that connection to Hawaii in some way. Do you have any last words of advice, or just some kind of inspiration for them of how can they reconnect to the land and get more of a sense of place and being?
I mean, every place has its indigenous people. Like Turtle Island has so many. I know they always remind me that they're the older siblings, which is true. They are. And I'm not the first one to say this. I remember hearing this said by an auntie, and she was just talking about that what you can do is you go and you learn about the indigenous people of that place. You go and you learn, like you are in service to them. And so I know every place is indigenous people, and I do believe that is part of restoring the balance of like how we restore that balance to taking care of the land. Who are those plant people that want to be there, that are, and putting back our lo'i. So I guess that would be my
mahalo. Like as I mentioned, like I want to be respectful of your time and energy, because I know it's very important too. So I just want to say mahalo for your time.
Mahalo.
And it's been an honor just being in your presence and learning from you and hearing your stories, and it's something kind of that inspires me, to continue to learn and be more open-minded and so forth. So mahalo for that.
Mahalo.